All right. So let me go ahead and start sharing my PowerPoint. And I'm going to tell you that this will be the blandest set of PowerPoint questions you have ever seen. Oh, how is this working? Oh, this is different.
You maybe just at the end because you were going through them.
I was, but what I'm surprised by is the fact that I don't seem to easily be able to page back to the beginning. All right, everyone close your eyes. All right, now, now it begins. Okay, so the presentation I'm giving you is all text, okay? That's basically because there are no illustrations that I can put with this that are really germane to the topic and that won't be distracting. So sorry about the text-heavy PowerPoint. You're not supposed to do that when you make PowerPoint presentations, but I can get away with it. Um, the presentation itself, its genesis, came from a thing that I did for the professional meetings of the Society of Vertebrate Paleontology for several years. I am a vertebrate paleontologist. Now, let that sink in, okay? I belong to a profession that only exists in academic institutions, all right? So my perspective is definitely that of an academic researcher, all right? And I gave this presentation for the first time and I sort of polished it at the um, annual national meetings of the Society of Vertebrate Paleontology, where they would have a series of roundtable discussions in an evening that were oriented towards different audiences. My table was for undergraduates thinking about getting into graduate programs in vertebrate paleontology specifically. Now, I've tried to remove the direct references to vertebrate paleo from this presentation. And I think that the concepts I'm going to be presenting are appropriate for anyone who's interested in performing graduate level research in the natural sciences. The caveat is, and by the way, I think graduate programs, research-oriented graduate programs in the natural sciences are all similar in their basic requirements. Caveat is that if what you're interested in is med school or engineering school or law school or something like that, okay, a professional training program that has its own unique way of doing things, then you want to take what I'm saying with a little bit of grain of salt and in your minds translate what I'm saying into what's appropriate for you. All right. But let's say you are interested in a research-oriented graduate school program. This is my advice for undergraduates. And let's just start out by getting some basics under our belt. All right. There is a tendency on the part of undergraduates to imagine grad school as being like applying to college, only bigger, more grandiose. And it's really not like that at all. Graduate studies are a totally different type of thing. And it's good that you grasp the differences right off the bat. The first difference is you can be rejected by a graduate school for reasons that have nothing to do with you, okay? You can be rejected for reasons that have nothing to do with you, even if you are a fully qualified candidate. Why is that? That is because in grad school, you are apprenticing yourself to a creator of knowledge. You are connecting with an academic advisor, and your relationship with that advisor is at least as important as your relationship with the institution that your advisor is employed by. All right. And so just start to think about what that means. It means that if you happen to apply and you say you want to do research on a particular topic, such that there really is only one person in the department to which you are applying who would be your logical advisor, and for whatever reason, that person is not available, you're out of luck, okay? Maybe your potential advisor's grants didn't get funded that year. Maybe your potential advisor is going to be away on a sabbatical. Maybe your potential advisor is already loaded up to the gills with graduate students. All of those things can cause your application to be rejected, even if you're perfect. All right. The last thing you want to wrap your brain around here is that letters of recommendation, they were important when you applied to college, right? Well, they're much more important now because by this point you should have had developed a track record of excellence in your studies and a demonstrated aptitude for performing research that you want people to comment on. Now, I used to give welcoming remarks to groups of students coming in for their summer orientations. And in those remarks, I would tell them, one of your key jobs as an undergraduate is to begin immediately cultivating a garden of faculty members who care enough, are invested enough in your success that when the time comes, they are going to blossom into glorious letters of recommendation. All right. Here is where you want those letters of recommendation to start blossoming. Because even though a letter of recommendation is an informal credential, it's vitally important, okay? Because these are going to be faculty members who write into their colleagues, and quite often people they actually know, or at least people whose reputations they know, and saying, hey, this guy, Arjun Gandhi, okay, I can see your square, Arjun. Arjun Gandhi, he's the real thing. You absolutely want him in your program, all right? Having someone who's willing to say that is important, and it needs to be a letter of recommendation that goes above and beyond your typical perfunctory sort of, you will be very fortunate to get this person to work for you type of letter, all right? It needs to be something that demonstrates that the recommender really knows you as a person. Okay, so what are your qualifications? What is it you have to bring to the table in order to find an appropriate connection with the graduate program? Well, let's start with the basics, the things you absolutely have to have. First is a strong evidence of seriousness and evidence of a strong work ethic. All right. That's going to show up in your transcript. It's going to come through in your letters. Its absence will come through in letters that damn you with faint praise. All right. So you need to be able to present that first and foremost. And I'll tell you, when I would give this talk to the vertebrate paleontologists, um, I would have to tell them something in addition to this, over and above this, and that is vertebrate paleontology is a field that's absolutely awash in fanboys and fangirls. All right. People who think paleontology is cool because they've seen, the Jurassic Park movies and they're fascinated by the question of how far the blood spurted when Tyrannosaurus Rex bit into its prey, but who don't really have a serious understanding of what the science is. And so for those people, I'd say your absolute first thing, the first words out of your mouth have to be aimed at demonstrating that you're not one of those. All right. Well, in a broader sense, this is part of that. You have to be able to demonstrate that you are serious about your proposed course of study and that you have what it takes to do it. All right. The next thing is depth of knowledge in your primary field and your supporting field. That's going to come out once again in your transcript and then secondarily in letters. But that transcript needs to show that you have the knowledge base that's necessary for the graduate studies that you want to pursue. You need good numbers, all right? Now, there are some programs. All right, I wrote this PowerPoint back when absolutely everyone and their grandmother was requiring GREs. There are some programs now that are not requiring them, but there is going to be some sort of numerical evaluation of your application. That may be someone sneaking a peek at your GPA and your transcripts. It may be institutions asking for your GRE or some equivalent. And if those numbers are not good, you want to take steps to make them good. And that means being willing to address weaknesses. All right. A demonstrated willingness to go back to areas of weakness and try to shore them up is something that garners respect. So, for example, I had a student in geology who, God bless him, wanted to be a vertebrate paleontologist. He's now pursuing a PhD in vertebrate paleontology. But one of his issues was a sort of an embarrassing grade in Math 140. Okay. Well, he could have moved forward with the grade that he had, but he went back and he retook the course in order to shore up his knowledge. And the fact that that appeared on his transcript was not only an evidence that he had mastered Math 140, but evidence of his willingness to go to the trouble of actually revisiting something that wasn't pleasant for him in order to shore up his knowledge. And then, of course, outstanding recommendations. I've said this before, I won't belabor it, all right? But these recommendations from faculty and from research mentors. Now, those are the basics. That makes you part of a thundering herd of applicants that are looking to compete with you. And Rachel, I think there's someone waiting to be admitted. Um, so how do you put yourself ahead of that thundering herd? Well, first, a relevant undergraduate major. All right. Now, what that's going to be depends on what you're trying to get into. I'll use the example of vertebrate paleontology, so the study of the vertebrate fossil record. All right. You could get into that from being a geology major. You could get into it from being a biology major with a strong organismal biology component, but you could conceivably get into it from um, human anatomy and physiology, or you could get into it from environmental sciences. The key is it has to be clear that your mind or your major is relevant to what you're trying to get into. Um, if it's not, if, for instance, your major were physical sciences, um, biological concentration, right? There used to be a thing like that at this institution. Um, you might have to explain exactly what that is and why it's relevant. If it's not immediately obvious, be prepared to do that. Your transcript has to document your mastery of the necessary prerequisite skills. All right. Those could be quantitative skills. Well, you can read it too. Laboratory skills, field skills, writing skills, or whatever is appropriate, but it needs to be visible on your transcript. And now, here's the less obvious thing. Like everyone knows that you have to document your mastery of prerequisite skills on your transcript. But one of those skills that people often don't document is their ability to organize research. All right. And to do that, you need to show that you have been a creator of knowledge by some means or another. All right. In my department, Department of Geology, we have a 6 credit, um, 2 semester senior research thesis that every one of our majors completes. It's kind of like a scale model of a graduate master's thesis. And so anyone who completes our major absolutely has it on their transcript that they are competent creators of knowledge, competent organizers of a research project from beginning to end, from identifying the research question to presenting the final results. But there are other ways at this university to achieve that. There's no department that doesn't have something like departmental honors research project or a shell course, okay? A course number like Geology 499 that is titled something enigmatic like Special Problems in Geology, which is in fact a course that's used to give you academic credit for independent research, okay? Um, so you want to make sure that your skill as an organizer of research appears on the transcript. Of course, you're going to do that research under the supervision of some mentor. That mentor will be the first person you go to ask for a letter of recommendation. Now, a robust attitude, okay? What does that mean? It means that when you apply to grad school, there's a significant possibility that your ego is going to get knocked around. Because, like we said, you can be rejected for reasons that have nothing to do with you. And there are fields out there that are really difficult to get into. If what you want to do is go to med school and you have the qualifications, you're probably going to get in. But let's say that you want to be a Mars rover driver. All right. You want to be a planetary scientist working in a research institution, and that's your goal in life. You may have to go through several rounds of applications into grad school before you're finally accepted. And you have to basically suck it up and accept that to begin with, and understand that that's part of the routine you're going to have to go through. And when you get that first round of rejections, don't put your head on your hands and say, oh God, I guess I'm just no good. All right. That's not what it means. It may have nothing to do with you. Now, between rounds of applications, you really are sort of a loser if you don't strengthen your qualifications. All right. You have an interval of time in which to acquire more qualifications. That may be through a relevant job experience. You know, if you were a geology major, for instance, I would say get a job with an environmental geosciences firm and learn how to operate analytic machinery. Okay. And that's stuff that goes into your bag of tricks. It may be coming back here and taking a course on a post-bac basis in order to improve your qualifications. Or it may be developing internships in research laboratories. Any of these things will do, and you be the judge of what's appropriate for your field. But you also need to develop flexible career paths that can respond to adversity and changing conditions. Now, oh God, how I tell this to the vertebrate paleontology enthusiasts, but it really applies to everyone. There is a very good chance that your plan A, for whatever reason, isn't going to pan out. You need to have in the back of your mind the plan B that will also work for you, that you can divert to if the need arises. And to that end, you want to master methodologies that can be applied to a bunch of different professional settings. All right, here's an example. We had a geology student who, as an undergraduate, did her senior thesis project um, using the methods of geochemistry. That is to say, she was taking specimens of rocks and zapping them in mass spectrometers and taking the data from that and making wise pronouncements. All right. She came back for a master's. And in that master's program, she did the most um, brilliantly original graduate research I've ever seen. She had a group of assistants put on different types of sneakers and walk across different parks in Washington, D.C. She then took those sneakers, pried the dirt and gunk that had gotten stuck in the treads of her sneakers out, and subjected them to a battery of geochemical tests, ran the results through a discriminant function analysis such that at the end, you could show her a sneaker with stuff caught in the tread, and she could tell you what park the person wearing that sneaker had been walking through. Now, just imagine all of the applications of that. All right. It was a tour de force demonstration of her mastery of methods of geochemistry that she could apply to other geologic issues, but she could also get a job as a forensic scientist in a police department or for the FBI. All right. There was a whole range of possibilities. And my opinion is that whenever you have the chance to master a methodology with a wide range of applications like that, you should take it. All right. I have no idea what time it is. Okay. And here's another important thing. Approach potential grad school advisors boldly. Okay. Um, I'm I can't see all of your squares now since I'm sharing this screen, but if I could see all of your faces, I would ask how many people have ever attended professional meetings in your area of interest. And I would hopefully see some hands go up. All right. The reason for that is that events like professional meetings, departmental seminars, or colloquia, places where the experts gather to share their results, are fantastic places for you to schmooze those experts up. All right. Society of Vertebrate Paleontology has their annual meetings. And I steer undergraduates who are interested in pursuing graduate studies towards potential advisors, saying, that person, go shake their hand and introduce yourself. You need to be willing to do that. You want to get in the face of people you might conceivably willing to work with. Okay. I guarantee you, everyone is going to be a lot nicer to you than than you think they're going to be, because everyone's flattered by the attention. Even if they're busy, they're flattered by your attention to them. They're flattered by your interest in their area of research. Okay. And they will be happy to talk to you about it. Now, the reason I say this at this point is you need to be shopping for the perfect advisor. All right. Remember, I said that grad school is more about that connection with the advisor than it is about uh, your connection with the institution. All right. And so you want an advisor who wants you before your application ever hits the desk. So who is that person? That's a person who's interested in the same general stuff that you are, and who is interested in studying it using the methodologies that you're interested in too. In other words, someone who can guide and critique your ideas about the subject area, but can also troubleshoot your nuts and bolts methodological issues. You need someone who is professionally secure themselves. Oh my God. Okay. The worst thing that could possibly happen is that you connect with someone who's going to be your grad school advisor. You move to Victoria, British Columbia in order to be their student. And the next year, they are denied tenure. Okay. That means they have a year to wrap up their stuff and move to a different institution. When that happens, your choice is, do I follow this person to their new institution, this person who has just suffered a significant professional setback themselves, or do I stay here and try to cobble something together, right? Not the position you want to be in. So you want to make sure that whoever you're going to work with is professionally secure themselves and well funded. Well funded means you don't have to spend 3 years on a teaching assistantship. It means they may have money to send you to do field work in Switzerland instead. You need someone who's professionally respected. In other words, when you complete your graduate degree, you're going to want their letter of recommendation. And if their letter of recommendation doesn't carry weight, then you will have sort of wasted your time. You want someone who has a demonstrated track record of advising students who go on to be successful. All right. Look at the former students of the person you're thinking about working with. Contact them, talk to them, and find out how that advisor was. But also, you want to make sure that that person has indicated in advance that they're willing to take you. All right, remember how at the beginning I said all that song and dance about how you could be turned down because your potential advisor was just not in a position to take you? Well, there's an easy way to avoid that problem, and that is by reaching out to them in advance, finding out from them, from the horse's mouth, that they are able to take you and that they want you. All right. If you get those two things, those two assurances from them, then you're in much better shape. Okay. First, you know that, no one's going to say, oh, so sorry, but Professor so and so is just not able to take you on. But second, if you were part of a faculty applications review committee. It's a lot harder to say no to someone when one of your colleagues is standing over your shoulder saying, that person, I want that person. All right. In other words, you want your potential advisor to be advocating for your application from the inside. So, this is why it really pays to have a handshake agreement with them in advance that they want you. All right. This person needs to be personally compatible with you. It needs to be a person whose personal style you don't hate, okay? But also a person who's willing to play the role of authority figure. In other words, a person who just wants to party with you is not going to be a good grad school advisor. A person who abuses you is not going to be a good advisor. Someone you get along with, but to whom you can subordinate yourself comfortably, that's the person. So that's about the advisor. It doesn't mean that the program in the institution isn't important. So let's talk about the program. So, first thing, in the natural sciences, now I am not speaking here of med school or law school or similar professional training programs where the idea is that it's normal for you to go into debt. And then when you get out, the money starts piling up in your hands and you pay that debt off. In research oriented natural sciences, the idea is that a graduate program is taking you on as an apprentice and they are willing to support you to the extent that they can. All right, so that you don't go into that mountain of debt. If you want to be a research anything, just fill in the science. An acceptance that does not have any kind of financial support with you is bullshit. Okay. It's their way of saying, we don't really want you, but we think that you might be a really good cash cow. You look like a dilettante with a lot of money. Here, let us milk you. Okay. That's not the relationship with the institution that you want. The institution needs to be well funded itself, of course. There are some places out there that may have trouble supporting people that they actually want to support. So, an institution, a department that has an endowment to support graduate studies is a very good thing. Okay, I was very fortunate to attend such a department myself. Has high quality, appropriate facilities for your research. If you are doing research that requires a $3 million laser ablation mass spectrometer, it's very nice if you are in a graduate school at an institution that has one and you don't have to fly to another part of the country in order to run your samples in a very brief and high pressure interval. And I should mention also appropriate facilities, access to research. That can also mean access to libraries. It can mean access to other affiliated institutions in their geographic regions, or it can be access to field areas. And one that provides an excellent intellectual community. Okay, when I was in grad school, I attended weekly seminars that were attended by people from at least 4 different departments in 2 different colleges at the university, at my university. And so we got this great reciprocal illumination. And all of those people are people who ended up being my friends. You want something like that too. You don't want to be isolated. So that brings us to the research project itself, the perfect project. Well, that depends on you. First of all, are you applying for an MS, for a master's degree, or for a PhD? Which is appropriate depends on your situation and what you're trying to achieve. So, are you ready to marry yourself to your field? Okay. When you advance to candidacy in a PhD program, that's sort of what that implies. You're saying this is going to be my professional specialty forever. And and so you're married, right? Now, it is possible to get a divorce, but it's about as difficult as getting a real divorce from a real spouse. Okay. So it's not something you want to do lightly. All right. So you only go for the PhD when you have a clear idea of what you want to spend your career studying. On the other hand, you might prefer a graduate program that gives you an opportunity for a mid-course correction. And that's what the break between the MS and the PhD affords you. All right. This is, of course, particularly useful if you're young, right? And you actually have the time to do this. I was a midlife crisis. I went straight for a PhD because I was persuaded it would shave a couple of years off of my time in grad school, and I was too old to waste time. Okay. And yet, even having done that, I'm going to tell you, I really wish I'd gone for the MS first because I could have used a mid course correction. I didn't have a chance for it. Also, do you actually need a PhD? All right. In my field of geology, the general feeling is that your optimum bang for the buck is actually at the terminal master's level. And by bang for the buck, I mean your optimization of your income potential relative to the number of years you spend in school. Okay. People who go on for a PhD do it because they're trying to get into specialized fields that require them. So if you really want to be a Mars rover driver, you're going to need the PhD. But if what you want to be is a top tier environmental scientist, the MS may actually be the perfect thing for you. So whatever you do, you want to take advantage of institutional strengths. All right. In my department at the University of Maryland. Okay, so my PhD was at the University of Texas, largest geology department in the nation, where there were researchers studying basically everything. All right. So if you went there and you said, I want to do research on the icy moons of Uranus, well, there was a guy there who could advise you in that. Okay. Here at the University of Maryland, we're a much smaller department. We have just over 20 research faculty, right? And so our research is much more focused. It's focused on geochemistry and geophysics primarily. Now, if you come here as a graduate student and say that you want to study something that's not in our area of focus, like, well, vertebrate paleontology, um, you're really in the wrong place, okay? Because there are no institutional strengths for you to take advantage of. But if you say you want to use mass spectrometers and laser ablation microprobes in order to probe the chemistry of some sort of geologic issue, then you're in exactly the right place. As a matter of fact, we are rated by US News and World Report among the top 10 geosciences programs on planet Earth. Okay. So for that, you're in the right place. But you want to make sure that the institution you end up in has strengths that match your interests. All right. And whatever you do really needs to provide background information for that plan B career path when after your 100th application for faculty positions at a research university, you finally get discouraged and decide you want to do something else. So also, whatever you do wants to be modular enough that you can spin off a series of publications while you're doing the work, okay, while you're in grad school, so that when you come out and you're applying for postdocs or faculty positions or whatever it is you applied for, you can point to your curriculum vitae and your publications. So these are all general thoughts, and I've tried to make them as general as possible, but everyone's specific situation, every academic discipline has its own idiosyncrasies, and the only people who can really advise you on the true best strategies are the people who are familiar with those. So your next stop, your homework, is to connect with people in your home departments who share your interests and understand precisely what it is you're trying to achieve, who can advise you on the best strategies for getting accepted in a graduate program that's going to help advance your career. All right. So that is the end of my presentation. And now I would be happy to take your questions.
So far, we have one. Someone
Okay.
asked, what are the best ways to reach out to potential graduate advisors?
Well, if you're in a position to go to national meetings or professional meetings of any sort where they may be in attendance, that's perfect because there you can literally shake their hand and meet them in the flesh. All right. And that's an environment where you can have spontaneous conversations of a quality you can't really have anywhere else. If they happen to be visiting this institution for whatever reason, that's sort of the second best. Grab them when they're here. But let's say that that's not possible. Send them an email with your elevator pitch, okay? Not a dissertation, but your elevator pitch explaining who you are, why you're interested in what they do, and why you would really like to be part of their research and to come and work with them as their graduate student. Okay, let's look at chat here. What does it say? Oh my God. Reach out. Do you have any advice for potential international students? Um, I'm sorry to say, I've just given it to you. This is one area where I've kept myself deliberately ignorant. Okay. I'm the undergrad director in geology, but there are certain areas of knowledge that are so involved, so complex, and so important that they can't be left to amateurs, which is me. So I really don't know much about your situation if you're an international student. The only thing I can say is that you should, in addition to reaching out to potential graduate advisors, be reaching out to the appropriate departmental officials who are actually in charge of making sure that people have the right visas and so forth. Every department, every academic department has a person who, and they may have a title like graduate director, all right, but a person who is in charge of dealing with the logistics of graduate students. And that person, if they are not an expert on visa requirements and so forth themselves, they can kick you in one kick to whoever is. Let's see. What is the general timetable on contacting potential advisors? Same question for submitting applications. It will vary program to program, but generally speaking, your application wants to be in the early spring of your last semester here, right? So I guess the ideal situation would be that if in the preceding semester, the fall of your senior year, that is when you reach out and you establish contact with that potential advisor because you are fresh in their mind when the application hits the table. Um, but it gives you enough lead time to discuss all of the issues that you need to discuss. As for taking the GRE, ah, um, I don't have a good answer for that. Obviously, before it's too late is the most important thing. But if you want an opportunity to take it again, to retake it, if you're not satisfied with your results, a little bit earlier. Now, I'm I took my GRE back when dinosaurs walked the earth, and we actually gathered at testing places and bubbled in little bubble sheets. Okay, and that's sort of my knowledge of it. Um, that is a question you absolutely should present to the graduate student uh, discussion that will occur tomorrow. All right. What are my options if I discover I don't like the advisor department or institution I choose? The options, it's like a marriage, okay? The options are you either suck it up and make it work or you switch, okay? And which is going to be the better option is going to depend on the reasons why you don't like the advisor department or institution, okay? It depends a lot on the department. If there is more than one potential advisor for you to work with, then you might be able to switch to a different advisor. There will be some personal relationship issues when you do that, but that's possible. Let's say that you decide that, oops, I'm actually in the wrong specialty. Well, this is a little bit easier because you don't have to say to your advisor, I'm sorry, I'm switching because I don't like you. Don't ever say that, but you don't have to imply that. Instead, you say, I'm switching because I've decided that I'm more interested in a different area of research. And I've definitely witnessed people doing that. You know, when I was in grad school, there was a woman who showed up all hot to be a volcanologist. And the next thing you know, she's working with a hydrogeologist studying the flow of groundwater. Okay. Um, Department, institution, there the choice is very simple. You either deal with it or you transfer to a different one. Okay. And the sooner that happens, the better. Um, Okay, Grace. I didn't do research outside of my studies as an undergraduate, and so I'm planning to be in a research lab for a year or two after undergraduate before grad school. Will this put me at a disadvantage? No, as long as the research that you're doing and the activities of that lab are germane to your area of interest. Okay, it would actually add to your qualifications. Now, I don't see any reason why you shouldn't go ahead and apply anyway, just to see what happens. All right. But understand that if you are pushed back the first time, that the experience you're going to get in this research lab is actually going to improve your qualifications for your next round of applications. So no, and especially if you didn't do research as an undergrad, to have experience in a research lab to show that you are, people don't like it when I use this word, but I'm going to use it, that you are indoctrinated in the culture of academic research and know how things happen in a research lab is going to put you an advantage over some naive person who has never had that experience. Um, can you get letters of recommendation from your work? Mohini asks. Um, well, the answer is sure. Some institutions in their applications will actually specify what kind of letters you ought to be supplying. Others won't. Um, I would say that it depends whether it's a good idea, depends on what kind of work you're doing. So, um, if your work is germane to your area of interest. So let's say that you want to do research in wildlife management, and your current employment is with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, monitoring wildlife in the Patuxent Wildlife Refuge. Well, then, yeah, absolutely. Those people can say that you have the ability to actually apply your knowledge to practical situations. If your work is at Starbucks, that's not gonna fly. Okay, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to be making a stupid joke, but I can't tell how anything's going over because I can't see your faces. All right, so please indulge me. But I hope this makes sense. That it depends on whether your employment is germane to what you're trying to do and whether it's giving you an opportunity to develop credentials for your graduate school application. If it is, then yeah, you absolutely could ask for recommendation from work. Okay, Tyler, what are good reasons to consider a gap year and bad reasons? A good reason is you're not sure what you want to do. Okay, that's the best possible reason. Okay, because no one succeeds at grad school who doesn't really want to be there. All right, if you're doing it because your family expects it, you are probably not going to succeed. Um, and so I would just say that as long as you use that gap year to increase your relevant knowledge and range of skills, you're fine. Okay. A bad reason to consider a gap year is that you just want to break from it all and you want to spend the time, whitewater kayaking out west. All right. In that case, what's going to happen is the knowledge in your head is going to start to deteriorate. It's not being augmented. And so as those gap years progress, you just become a staler and staler and staler candidate. Okay. Luke, would working in a relevant industry but not in a research position hurt an application for a research-based graduate degree? I don't think so. Now, a lot depends on the specifics here. So this is one of those questions that you want to discuss with a knowledgeable person in your own department. However, I think as long as you can make the claim that you are improving your range of skills through your work, and you are learning techniques that you can bring to bear on graduate studies afterwards, that your work experience is going to work for you. Okay. Um, Obviously, if there's a research component to it too, that makes it even better. All right. So the more skills, the more knowledge you get, the better off you are. But no, I don't think it would hurt your application. I think there may be other things that might help it more. Um, Russell, how important is name recognition when it comes to choosing an institution? I think the name that counts the most is your research advisor. Okay. When you apply for, let's say you go the full academic route and you apply for faculty positions, I think that the people who evaluate your application will be as interested in knowing who advised you as they will be interested in knowing what department they were in. Generally, the good advisors are also affiliated with good departments. So it's it's not really that huge an issue. But I think in all things, the connection with the advisor is paramount. Um, Beyond that, please ask someone who's knowledgeable about your specific field. Um, okay, and I think that's the end of the questions in the chat. Does anyone have any other questions that they'd like to present to me? All right. Well, I'm
So
going to
while we're
close.
waiting, I can share the screen for tomorrow's event, unless I just interrupted you from saying something brilliant.
No, I'm not saying anything brilliant. There's my email. If I can be helpful to any of you, please feel free to contact me, um, and I will do what I can.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you do this every year, and every year I think I learn something new. But I wanted to share too, because I mentioned earlier that this is a two-part event. So you've heard from Dr. Merck. Tomorrow we're going to have grad students, current grad students, talk about their experience and how they made certain decisions. The link is there. Same thing with this. If you go to that, you can RSVP and get the Zoom link. Thank you for being here. We will record the panel too. So if you have class and miss it, it will also be posted to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/UMD Career Center. But thank you, John, and thank you to everybody who came today.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.